Hey guys, Bart from TST Industries here. In this video, we're going to show you the installation of our TST Industries Elite-1 Fender Eliminator on a 2015 and up Yamaha FZ-07. Now let's talk a little bit about this guy. So when you go to purchase this kit, the common part of the system is our closeout. This is a CNC machined aluminum base, black anodized, very nice closeout that replaces the void in the undertail of the bike where the fender comes out of. Now, during your purchase, you will be presented with two choices. You can either purchase a standard license plate bracket along with this base, or you could upgrade to an adjustable license plate bracket like this one. Choice will be yours. In this video, we're going to go through both installations and clarify everything for you guys so that it's absolutely clear how to install this unit. Now, you'll also be presented with a choice to purchase one of our LED pod signal kits. They replace your OEM signals. They're a little bit smaller form factor and they do a really nice job in combination with one of these Fender Eliminators. So let's talk about the difference between the standard and the adjustable just for a second here. So our standard Fender Eliminator does a really good job of just a simple means of holding your license plate, while our adjustable one allows you some adjustability. I'll demonstrate here on our R3. It'll give you the adjustability of your license plate to the angle of your liking. So now let's get into the installation procedure. Follow along, try to make it fun. All right, so the first step, as always, will be to remove the current license plate with its OEM hardware so that we can reuse that on our setup. We'll put that to the side, and then the next step will be to remove the passenger seat. And we can put that to the side now. So at this point, we will get rid of the driver's seat by removing these two fasteners here, one on either side. And now we'll remove this body component. Two Phillips head screws here. And it just pops up in this direction. Now this body component that joins the rear of the tail, also held in by two Phillips screws. This guy just pulls back. Now at this point, we will remove these two fasteners. And after they come out, we will also remove these spacers. Put those to the side. Now we can undo the three connections for the components that will be coming off with the fender here. These are the OEM signals and also the license plate light. So I'll just pry up on this tab here and pull back. Just like that. Now these are free to come out. I'm gonna remove them from the routing clips. There really is only one here. Once these are free, it's gonna be really easy to drop that fender and move on. All right, so now we'll just remove these two additional screws here from the tail. And now we can move on to the bottom of the bike. Now we can begin the removal of all these components here that will give us access to the four fasteners holding the fender on. First step of that procedure will be to remove these two push fasteners. I will reset the center that unlocks it, and I will just pry it up, or rather down towards the ground away from the bodywork. And I'll pry this down, push it forward, that clears out. In addition, I will remove these two push fasteners in the same fashion. Reset the center, pry out. And Now we will have enough access to these two side panels of the tail to pry them apart. There is a friction fastener right about this location that plugs right into the tail light. So we need to pull straight out. All right, so now with the tail spread, we have access to the 4 fasteners holding the fender assembly to the frame. So now I'll remove the last push fastener from the center behind the fender, from my point of view, actually in towards the front of the bike. And this is the last push fastener that holds plastic components of the fender to the bodywork. Now we have all that loose, and I will remove the 4 fasteners holding the fender now. Now as the last fastener comes out, I'm going to support the fender with my other hand, making sure that it doesn't just drop and yank on the wires that are still left inside. And now I'm just going to make sure none of the plugs get snagged. Take this unit out and we can put that to the side. So now we will remove the tail light from the bike. We will start by removing the tail light connector from the harness. We'll press down on this tab here and withdraw the plug, just like that. We'll undo this wiring loom from the routing clip here in the sub tray. And now that it's free, I'm going to proceed to removing these 2 fasteners. When I remove these screws, I try to get the spacer to come out with the screw, because otherwise, if you leave them in and you start removing the tail light, this may drop straight into all this geometry and it's a pain to get out. And once the screw's out, you got to be careful with this because it can just drop. It's fairly loose here. And then we got this guy out and we're ready for the next step. Now at this point in the installation process, it is necessary to pre-configure a license plate bracket onto our undertail closeout. Even though the procedure for configuring the standard versus the adjustable license plate bracket onto the closeout is different, beyond that, all the steps are the same. So we will show you the pre-configuration of both of these, but we will only install one on the bike, and that should be sufficient to show you guys how this goes. So let's start with the simpler one, which is the standard. I will empty the contents of the hardware bag using the screw and the washer. I will insert that through the hole in our license plate bracket. I'll penetrate through the surface of our closeout. Spin one of these locking nuts on. I won't tighten it down. I'll leave some adjustability so I could center our bracket, and just do that on both sides. And just to note, these are locking nuts. They have a star locking component on the bottom. That component should go towards the surface of your undertail here. I'm sorry, undertail closeout rather. And now I'm just gonna center this on the closeout. Now I can lock it down in place, lock it down by hand, and then use a 10mm screw and an Allen. This sub-assembly would be ready to go onto the bike, and we would use the hardware kit that came with the system to assemble it onto the bike. You can look for those steps a little bit further in the video. Now we will show you the pre-configuration of our adjustable fender eliminator on this closeout. All right, so now to assemble our adjustable license plate bracket, we'll need to use all the components that came in the kit. We will start with 2 countersunk screws and the 2 flange nuts. All these other parts will go to the side. We will start with these brackets and our main license plate bracket. Countersunk screws will go through the middle hole on either side, and these brackets will need to be configured like so. So now these brackets will fit on the back of this assembly like this, and get one of the nuts threaded on either side, making this sub-assembly here. From the side view, it looks like this. All right, now I will snug these bolted connections down. Using a 3mm Allen and an 8mm box wrench. What we want to do here is leave a little bit of adjustability. You want to tighten it down all the way. All right. All right. Now I'm going to arrange the next 2 components that will be fitted onto this sub-assembly. This is facing the rear of the bike. These hinges have a more rounded portion here that also faces the rear of the bike, and they fit from within the middle of these 2 brackets, and the bracket will sit with its hole on a little raised boss on the surface of this hinge. It will receive one of these little washers and the screw. Now again, I am not tightening it down all the way. That'll be done later. And we'll just do the same thing on the other side. Again, rear of the bike from within the middle. Fit it onto the boss, washer, and screw. All right, so now we can assemble this sub-assembly onto our undertail closeout. This will be fitted into these 2 holes. The hardware kit for this license plate bracket comes with these washers and screws. We'll configure the screw and washer like this, pass it through the inside surface to the outside, and screw it into the hinge. Repeat on the other side. So at this point, your sub-assembly should look like this. The slanted portion of the undertail closeout should be towards the rear of the bike, and the license plate bracket should be facing the rear of the bike with the TST Industries logo upright. Side view should look like this. All right, so now let's tighten down the hinges to the closeout. I will use a 10mm open-ended wrench. And a 4mm Allen, I believe. So the 10mm open-ended wrench is just for the purpose of making sure that as we tighten down on this screw, our hinge does not move. So what you want to do is get the wrench on there and adjust the hinge so that it's parallel with the center line of the bike. and then lock down on that component. For those of you that want a little bit extra peace of mind, you can use some blue Loctite on these bolted connections. It's not necessary to use them on this connection because here we have nylock locking nuts, so it won't be necessary there, but everywhere else, if you wish, if you're gonna use Loctite or some other thread locking agent, use blue or some equivalent that's not very hardcore. All right, so I'm just gonna snug these up. All right, now I need to take the time to center the license plate bracket on the closeout, and I can judge if it's center by how the other two more center screw holes line up with these L brackets in the back, and it looks like we have a very equal gap on both sides, so I'm just going to lock this down. Otherwise I would just adjust it side to side. All right, so at this point this subassembly is ready to go. In the parts kit you will find a small countersunk screw and a flange nut that can be used to block out this center hole if it's going to remain unused. So if you're not running wires for any purpose such as license plate light or signals, you'll block this out, and that way you won't have any holes for water and debris to get into your trunk. For the purpose of our installation, we will leave that hole open because we will be fitting our pod signal kit through here, so we'll need a space for the wires to get through. And also, if you guys are going to install a license plate light, it's a very good handy way to pass the wires through to the inside. At this point, we'll just step back to the bike and continue the installation. So now we can empty the contents, the rest of the contents of this hardware baggie. Identify some of these components. We'll have these spacers, long countersunk screws, and flange lock nuts. We'll get one of each of these, and the screw will go through the outer hole. And then we'll place one of these on top, and then we will penetrate the frame with one of these screws here around these welded in nuts. And what I'll do here is hold it from the bottom with a tool. I'll grab one of these locking nuts and some needle nose pliers for ease. And thread that on. Now on the other side, I will do the same exact thing. And I suppose you could do this by hand. I'm using some long needle nose pliers just because it's more convenient. Hands can actually get in here, so it's not that big a deal. Now I'm going to use an 8mm box wrench to get these snugged up here. I will not tighten any of these connections until the tail light is in place and everything, all the other components around are reassembled. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to tighten this down all the way. Now it looks like we have enough adjustability left. All right, now we'll replace this undertail component that came down during the disassembly and align this hole with the forward hole on the undertail closeout. Also need to make sure that this panel goes under the tail panels. Now we can use one of these smaller push fasteners, actually the same one that came out of this hole before. Get that in there and make sure it's engaged. All right, now we can proceed to the next step, which will be put the tail light back on the bike. So the tail light wire just gets fed through here, through the left side of the bike. There's a routing clip right here it needs to clip into later. Just gently move the fairings around until it fits into place, and these two grommets up top align with the mounting holes. And we'll use the same screws and spacers that came out of there. Go ahead and tighten these down. Now we will need to get that friction fastener that's on the inside here into that grommet on the tail light, while also aligning the catch feature here with the tab on the lens here. While also actually making sure that the tail ends up on the outside of this undertail panel that we replaced earlier. And if you do this gently, make sure everything aligns, you'll have very good results, just like that. And I will do that on this side as well. All right, now this is looking pretty good here. I'm going to replace the screws and spacers here on top, and also this middle panel, so that everything is kept in place. So these spacers go in with the shoulder towards the top here, makes them fit into the tail fairing. Now this panel has some slide fasteners here that fit into these slots, and also a catch for this guy. So you have to start from the back, align it, push it back towards the front, and keep them loose until I have both fasteners in. And apply some pressure from the rear, and then tighten them down. So now we will need to replace all these push fasteners that we took out from these 4 holes. I will start with the small ones that go towards the front of the bike. Reset them. And plug them in. Now for the rear, as you can remember, during the disassembly, we had this component in place that comes off when these are removed. So naturally these are a little bit longer because they go through multiple layers of plastic. That is a little bit too long here. You guys can judge for yourselves. This will rattle like this. So what I'll do is scavenge one of these components from a more forward location under this fairing connection here. These fairings are all screwed together fairly closely, so this is mainly a locating feature. So I'll extract this one and replace it with the longer one that we took from the rear here. And use the shorter one on the rear, since this is a highly cosmetic area. All right, and that looks good. I'm going to do the same on the other side. All right, now we can proceed to the alignment of our Fender Eliminator kit here within the tail. Move this around to get it to fall to its natural state. And then I'm gonna move our fender eliminator, rather the undertail closeout, to where I want it to stay. And now I'm gonna lock it in place. Now as I tighten this, it may shift, so I need to keep checking back and forth, making sure that the gaps are staying equal on both sides as I tighten it down. Now once I tighten this all down, this is going to be pretty much set here. At this point, it's looking good. We can proceed to installation of any peripheral equipment, like a license plate light or signals. So for the purpose of this video, we're not going to be doing license plate light installation. We shot a separate video that shows step-by-step procedure of that. You can check the right-hand side of your screen for a link to that video. And for now, we will just continue with the installation of the license plate here. So the reason why I like to put the license plate on prior to locking down the hinge adjustment is because I want to see what the system looks like adjusted with the license plate in place, since that's the way it's going to end up in the long run. All right, so now you need to decide for yourself how you want this plate adjusted. If you just leave it in its natural hanging state, you will run the risk of bottoming out and possibly hitting your license plate. So I don't recommend this particular location, but anywhere here, any one of these angles should be pretty good. Back here, license plate can't really be seen, so sort of defeats the purpose of having a license plate. So you be the judge of what's best for you. I'm gonna adjust it to where I like it. So you want to make sure that you properly engage the threads on these bolted connections so that during riding vibration, these fasteners don't come loose and you don't lose your license plate. Once again, if you guys want to use Loctite or some other thread locking agent, I recommend using blue or something like that. Definitely don't go red. It's just a little overkill. Anyhow, so if you were installing just the license plate bracket portion with our fender eliminator, that would be pretty much done here, and we would reassemble all the other components in the reverse order of disassembly. We will show that reinstallation at the end of this video. The next portion of this video will show the installation of the optional pod signal kit with our harness converters. So we'll just get into that right after this step. All right, so our Yamaha specific pod signal kit comes with 2 LED type pod signals, harness converters that enable you to plug into the Yamaha harness and convert to bullet connectors that these signals terminate in, and also mounting kit that enables you to mount this whole assembly onto your license plate bracket. So first step here will be to figure out the wiring scheme that this Yamaha is set up with. We will unpackage these components here. I will plug one of the harness converters into one of the signal plugs, power up the bike, and I will need to test which connections here will make it work. These are universal Yamaha harness converters, so they work differently on rears and fronts of all different model Yamahas. So we need to figure out which one's positive here, which one's negative. So right off the bat, I can look on this plug and see where the 2 wires connect to. There will be a brown and red combination. We'll try yellow to red, black to brown, and I cycled the signal lights and we do not have light. I'm going to reverse these. There we go. So for this particular bike, it looks like yellow to brown, red to black. It's very important that these connectors don't touch while you're testing or after this whole system's installed, because they will short and blow a fuse. So you'll see us throw some electrical tape over these connectors after we get the installation in place. Now I'll just power down the bike and disconnect here. I will grab the other harness converter and plug it in. And now we can jump to the bottom of the bike and start working on installing these onto the license plate mount and getting them connected. So for this step, we needed to remove the license plate, and at this point we can empty the pod signal mounting kit and find one of these L brackets. First step here will be the removal of this nut from the pod signal, and we will feed the wires of the pod signal through the slotted side. And this will install just like this on the back of our license plate bracket. So now I will feed this nut flange first onto the wires. And just get it on here just with my fingers. I'm going to leave some adjustability here. At this point, we can feed these wires through here, through the center. And now the wires will be routed like so. And back into the trunk. There's not a lot of room in there. It's a little cumbersome. All right, so now we're good here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose which side this will be mounted on. So this will be my left signal. So first I will connect my left signal, which connects to the gray plug on the harness. And we will use the scheme that we found before. It'll be black to red and yellow to brown, like this. This blue guy is redundant. I will grab some electrical tape, and now making sure that the vinyl caps are over the crimps, lock this in place. Now you can use harness tape or some high quality electrical tape, and this will last, not a problem. There's not a lot of heat accumulation or moisture getting into this compartment here, so this should be sufficient. This is not the primary means for insulation of those connectors. They do have caps on them. You're just locking this in place. Now the blue one, I'll just lock that in with these two other guys. That one actually doesn't have a connection going to it, so he's redundant. Pull it nice and tight, finish it up nicely. I'm going to give it one more test so I don't get too far ahead. Left signal lighting up really nice. All right, and now I would like to get it situated here with the license plate in place. So I'll grab some of the other components from my hot signal mounting kit. We have 60mm long screw and a washer. We will put that through the license plate. Situate the L bracket on the back here. And I'm going to use one of these locking nuts with the locking component towards the L bracket, along with a larger washer right under that nut. Just thread that together. We'll tighten everything up later. And for now, we can just let all this stuff hang as we address the other side. So the other side will basically follow the same scheme. We'll remove the nut. And let's see, make sure that we got it oriented the right way. Wires will feed through the slotted side, and then nut will go back on flange first. And we'll route it through the center here, and then up into the trunk through the hole, the last open hole in the undertail closeout here. So now we have these guys out in the trunk, ready to be connected. I have the black connector, which is the right side signaling system. And the harness converters will be connected black to red and yellow to brown. Again, test it so I don't go too far forward. Right side, light. Once again, electrical tape to lock down these little caps. Once we have a nice package like this, we'll back this up towards the rear of the trunk, rear compartment here, and press it into that routing guide that the OEM signals came out of, and also same place that houses the wire for the rear tail light. Make sure that it's out of the way of the trunk latch. Number of wires in there. You can just bunch them up in a way that'll stay. I think I did a good job here. I'm going to jump to the bottom again. Now I will align my license plate. Get a washer on it, one of the screws from the hot signal mounting kit. And get this L bracket onto that screw from the back side. Large washer onto that screw from the back side. Again, a locking nut with the locking component towards the bracket and also onto the washer. I have a little tightness in my wires here. I'm just gonna have to make sure I have enough slack so I could line my signal up. All right, so now you can begin locking down this connection here. First, I'll center my license plate and center the screws on it. I just need to make sure that the pods for the pod signals are level across the bike before I lock this down in place. All right, that looks good. Won't move. I will lock down the other side. All right. Now we can actually get these perpendicular to the ground so that cars behind you can see your signal. Just grab a 14mm open-ended wrench. Now looking from the side, I'll align the flat surface of the signal perpendicular to the ground and then lock this signal in place. Now I wouldn't recommend over tightening this. There is a threaded stud that is over molded with a rubber piece here. If you over tighten it, it'll pull it out. So the friction of the rubber and the locking component of the nut will keep your signal from moving. Use only enough tension to lock it in place. This one's good. I'm gonna address this side now. All right, that's looking good. So for the purpose of neatness here, you can use two little zip ties to zip tie these wires together. I will do that a little bit later. At this point, what I'd like to do is finish up with the reinstallation of all the OEM components that we've removed to make this installation possible. So we'll do that now. All right, so I will replace these screws here. Now these do have a shoulder, so don't just jam them in. Get them to the point where they start catching. You're gonna have to move this fairing panel around a little bit so that the shoulder can penetrate through the fairing and lock onto the frame. And you'll lock that in place. And then replace this panel. So it has two catches on each side and also a stud that fits through a hole here. Boom. Make sure that fits well before proceeding. In case you didn't keep track of your screws, these are the zinc plated Phillips self-threading screws, or sheet metal screws rather. Now I will replace the driver's seat. So now I will just neaten up these wires here in the back, zip down with small wire ties. And after that, I'll just pull back on these wires from the inside just a little bit, making sure that they're not sticking out too far. And one more time, make sure all the wiring in the back compartment here is out of the way of the latch and won't get damaged. So that's done here. It's looking good. We can replace the passenger seat. Test the components one more time. All right, so if you guys are experiencing a hyper flash situation because you've replaced your OEM incandescent signal lamps with LED signals, there's a simple fix. We produce a LED flasher relay that is available on our website. We also have an installation video of that part on this particular bike. You can find the video through its product page on our site, or you can just go to the LED flasher relays section of our YouTube channel and find it there. And now, this bike is ready to go.